Westwood Capital. Also, Jason Scharfman, a due diligence expert and managing partner at Corgentum. Did I say that right? How do you say the name of your firm?
That's right, Corgentum.
All right. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Len, is there really a change in attitude? I mean, has this scared enough investors out there, do you think?
I think so. I think this has been a real tragedy and very scary for a lot of people. And I hope what we take away from this, because now everyone is focused on this problem. But a year from now, will we remember that, you know, the lessons we should have learned from this, and those are, you have to be very diligent when you choose an investment. You have to ask the questions, and you have to really ask the, serious questions, pick up the phone, talk to someone at the investment advisor. You need to be diversified.
But, Jason, what does that mean? Because you're a due diligence expert. Obviously, he was sending out statements. I mean, what could people have done differently, specifically, to avoid this? Because he fooled a lot of people for a long time. Obviously, he was pretty good at sending out statements and doing things to make you think it was legit.
That's right. I mean, he had an air of credibility about him, which is the worst thing from the investor perspective. Things that investors could have done is talk to other investors, try to find investors who would have possibly redeemed, try to reach out to things like custodians or service providers to obtain more information and an external perspective of people who work with Madoff. And when you start to do that, you begin to notice not only a number of yellow flags, but red flags, which cause you to raise some questions, which you can either then go to Madoff, and if he won't answer, redeem, or talk to more people and try to get comfortable yourself. Ultimately, it's about doing your homework.
That makes sense. But Len, I mean, there were a ton of people out there that did go ahead and redeem. And obviously, he had a lot of investors who were high net worth, high profile people who seemed to be happy with the service for years and years and years. Would, what Jason have said worked in this case?
Well, due diligence is always important to do, and there are certain things that you absolutely have to do in a case like this, and that were fairly obvious red flags. For example, there was no custodian. There was no third party holding these securities. Basically, people had entrusted someone to manage assets for them where there was no third party hanging on to the assets. And that's an important distinction. Another issue is, how much was Madoff charging? Madoff was known as a financial genius, yet he only charged 4 cents a share to make trades. Now, if you think about that from a common sense perspective, if you or I went to a heart surgeon and they said they'd do the surgery for $100 an hour, we might turn around and walk out of the office.
Right.
So, there's a lot of things you have to ask and look at when you're looking at a financial investment. And one of the most important ones is to know that a third-party custodian is holding and counting the securities. One other thing I'll mention is you got to always understand what you're doing. Madoff used a so-called split price option conversion strategy. Now, some people may understand what that means, but I'm sure that not all of his investors are intimately familiar with that strategy. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it.
Okay. That's going to be, that's going to be a relatively small list of investments then left for the average person.
I think one point important to make is that you really need to understand, as you raise the point, a lot of people were introduced to Madoff by professional investors or third-party advisors who clearly weren't doing their due diligence. And one thing investors, if they're investing in something like a split strike conversion that they might not be able to understand on their own, is to be able to vet the due diligence processes of their third-party advisors. And if they can't prove that they're doing the homework, they need to do a little more of their own work.
Yeah, it raises the question of feeder funds, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show as well, because that gave a lot of people confidence and clearly should not have. Thanks to both of you gentlemen for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up next on The Closing Bell, the safety of one of the